Hey Lisa,
Hi, Steve.
how you doing?
I'm good. It's such a nice day here in Toronto. So I was just in my garden and now I'm with you. So life is good.
Oh, glad to hear it. It's a nice day here as well in London. For once, we're on similar weather patterns, which is quite
Yeah.
rare, but
Yeah.
I'm glad we're both
Yeah.
having a nice day. So here we are for another conversation today. I think today's topic is going to be all about a leadership program that you and I met on, which is the
Mhm.
reason we are actually here having these conversations.
Yes. It's the reason why we're friends.
I know, we
Yeah.
have a lot to owe to that leadership program
We
that we
do.
signed up
We
for. In
do.
addition to everything we took from it, we took this friendship, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I think the reason we want to talk about it, obviously, we met there, which is amazing, but equally, I think it had a pretty big impact for both of us. And when we're looking at conversation topics, we always want to have conversations about interesting topics, things that are meaningful. And I guess that program itself was meaningful and interesting in itself. So I think talking about it a little bit more, what we got from it, and the impact it had is probably a really good place to go today.
Yeah. It's funny because when I think of leadership program back in my corporate days, it was kind of you're in some room with, if you're lucky, some windows and someone's talking and maybe you do some experiential stuff, but there's still a little bit of proper kind of ness that
Yeah,
happens, and this was not at all that. We basically were in this program for 10 months but had these 1 week retreats where we're all living in the same house and sharing um, rooms and washrooms and all sorts of stuff. So we were stretched in all sorts of different ways, 24 hours a day, I think.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know how much of that I even knew about when I signed up for this thing, because I didn't really know much about it. The leadership program. I just heard a lot about it. The company that runs it is called Coactive, and that they do a lot of coach training, leadership training. I'd been through the coach training. I think you had a few years
I had,
back as
yep.
well. And you just hear about this thing. It's like this mystical program. And I was thinking, what is this thing? I want to do it. You learn about it, and you learn that it is abroad. You have to go away to Spain, or you can do it in California, I think, as well, and a couple of other places. But like you say, you go to these retreats throughout the year, and you're going to meet these different people. But for me, that was really what I knew. I didn't really know much more other than that it was about your personal leadership and how you sharpen the world and that type of thing. So, so yeah, I guess in terms of like for you, when you'd heard about this program, like
Yeah.
what were you either thinking it was, or why did you sign up for it without even knowing really what it was?
I think part of it was curiosity, because there is this mystery around this program. And even today, we're not going to share what actually happens there,
No.
because part of going to this program is how you react to the unexpected, right? And so if you kind of know what's going to happen, some of that is lost. So I think part of it was curiosity. Secondly, I had been in leadership for a while and I thought, oh, interesting. The coaching program was so different than what I anticipated. So I was so curious about what their take would be on leadership. I knew that it wasn't going to be all of the leadership training I had gotten before, even during my MBA. I knew it was going to be different than that. And I knew that for me, having been in the corporate world for about 20 years, I knew that there was another way of doing leadership that would resonate more with me. And I was really hopeful that that program would be that. So it was curiosity and an urge to look at leadership from a different lens that took me there. How about you?
Yeah, I think it was quite similar. I think, well, it's like anything. When you hear about something that's so good, everybody that's ever taken this personal leadership program has always recommended it. I've not heard anybody that didn't. And these are people I've known and trusted that have talked about it. So I thought, okay, well, if something's talked about that highly, it must be good. So then, as soon as you know something's good, you want a piece of it, right? So there was that element, but also, yeah, just the fact that I knew this company, they look at things in a different way, from a different angle, like you said. I knew it wasn't going to be some boring, old-fashioned leadership course. It was going to be interactive. It's going to have a very human element to it, seeing everyone as individual people, And I just thought, yeah, I think it's a good chance to stretch a bit and see what happens. But also, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You know, you go to Spain for a few times a year and stay in a nice house and all of that. But I saw pictures of the place and I thought, well, that looks good at least. Even if I just sit by the pool, then I'll have a nice time. So I had the urge, signed up. And then, you know, you just wait to go. You wait for the first retreat, and then you realize, where am I going when you get on the plane? And you know you're going to be staying in a house with various people, and it actually ended up, I think, like 21 or 22 people from all over the world that you meet on day one at this house, at this location in Spain. And they are from literally everywhere. We are all from everywhere, from all over. You know, obviously you're in Canada, I'm in the UK. I think we had representatives from Saudi Arabia, from Dubai, from I think Bulgaria.
There were people from everywhere, and we all convened in this one beautiful home with this gorgeous scenery. I mean, we woke up to pretty much the most beautiful kind of view, but we know we're going to be challenged and stretched there. So if someone were to, because people often ask me, like, how would you describe the program? How would you describe the program without giving away, you know, what happens there?
That's a good question. I would say, well, without overthinking it, I would say an intense exploration of who you are as a human being, how you currently show up in your life, and what is possible for you when you stretch to the different parts of yourself that you may not have even experienced or stretched to before.
I'm so glad I asked you, because I love that definition. Like, that really feels so true. It is intense at times. It really is an exploration. And this kind of coming back to, you know, who you are and who you want to be. Yeah, I love how you put that, because it's certainly a way to take down all of these walls or different faces that we put on. All of that comes down, and you're kind of left to go, oh, okay, this is what's coming up now. And you have to face it and be with it, and ultimately be okay with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is like going under a microscope. And there's this show in the UK, I'm assuming you must have over there, the Big Brother.
Yeah.
Everyone goes into a house from different places, different backgrounds, and then, you know, they are under a microscope, right? And at first they put their game face on, and they're just being how either they are in the outside world or how I think they need to be in this particular group, which is what happened, I think, for me a little bit. So, and then after a few days, you let your guard down, people start to get to know you, you're thrown in all these experiments, let's call them, or activities, or all sorts of things that test your responses. And through those processes, I suppose you sort of break yourself down a bit, and then you get to sort of see for yourself a little bit more, actually, what am I capable of here? Or what was the person when I came in exactly me, or was it a slightly conditioned version of me that I'm so used to that I just don't know any other way? And so you're sort of seeing that about yourself, whilst you're also seeing 20 odd other people going through the same process, and you're starting to kind of understand yourself better just through seeing everyone else going through that process as well.
It does feel like a spiritual Big Brother experience, because you've got these amazing leaders who kind of help to navigate those intense moments, right? Not in the sense that they try to dampen it, they don't, but certainly they're there to facilitate the exploration of what came up, the learning of what came up, and then to just be with whatever it is that comes up in the midst of all this intensity, right? Which wouldn't likely maybe make great TV, but makes for really amazing.
I think some of it would. Some of it would have made great TV when I reflect back on it.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that's always the case when you throw 20 odd people in that don't know each other, and intense situations, there's going to be some, you know, sparks and different things that come up, which is what I think they want. The creators of that program want these things to happen so that you're forced to stretch into different muscles to resolve situations or test your response to things that you wouldn't get in the outside world, because unless you're put in those situations and stretched, you'll just come out the same as you went in. And in a way, it's that program's a metaphor for life, isn't it? If you don't stretch, you don't get out of your comfort zone. If you don't do that stuff, you're going to stay the same. And that's a big part of what I think that program is all about.
Yeah, and they're certainly not shy at kind of reflecting back what's coming out of you, right? The whatever impact you're having, whatever, they're really not only are they not afraid, they are there to hold up the mirror and say, this is what's coming up. Is this really what you want to be happening? Or just be with what it is, right? And that's fine. But I think a big part of it is kind of holding up this humongous mirror that because we're so proper or polite in normal work, in the, you know, in life, certainly in corporate, some, you know, often we hold back, and this is all about letting the holding back, you know, placing it to the side and just being with what is, right?
Yeah, I think a few people at first struggled with the concept of, is this a leadership program or is it a personal development program? Because the line is quite blurred, but actually I think that's now represented in the world, in the corporate world now. There is becoming much more of a blur, and even on LinkedIn you see there's much more personal posts, the humanizing the workplace. So that leadership program was definitely a good sandpit for that, for how the worlds actually collide, when rather than them being separate. Like there's a leadership program which is all about corporate world, and then there's a human program. It's like we are all humans in corporations and in our lives and all of that stuff. So yeah, it was a good exploration and a good sandpit for playing around with, you know, the different parts of yourself as a human being. And how to explore the different range. And I think we talked on a previous call about the piano, you know, this piano analogy. I think that came from that, about how we live our lives on one small part of the piano, and we play these keys because that's what we used to. That's how we just get through the day. And actually there's all these other keys that we just don't typically play or experience. And those are the keys they force you to sort of mess around with, you know, on that program. Yeah.
And they develop a safe, trusting environment for us to be able to play with that kind of stuff, right? Because it's uncomfortable and awkward and intense, and all of those things happen when you're playing outside of the range of notes that you tend to play with. And so they encourage you to go way out, or at least as much out as you can, and develop that safe container for us to do that. One of the things I remember them saying, which I loved, was they linked leadership with authenticity and messiness, like being a human and being real, right? Which is counter to a lot of how things were before we allowed those two worlds to come together. And I think still there's moments where I still find I try to keep those two worlds apart, and I have to remind myself to intertwine them a lot more. You were going to ask me a question?
Yeah, and I've completely forgotten it. So
okay. Sorry.
I know it will come back to it will come back to me. So I guess we talked about, you know, the program, roughly kind of why we went. It's an exploration of different parts of ourselves, and learning to obviously be in an environment with multiple other people, living together day in, day out. And you know, you're with these people like every day, 24/7, sharing rooms and all sorts of stuff. So
well, and the program started like early and ended late. Like they were full on days too.
Yeah, the first day was like 9 till 10 at night or something.
Yeah, it was like, crazy.
It was long.
Yeah,
they want to beat you down, you know. But sometimes you need to do that. You need to get into these intense situations to stretch, you know.
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, if you haven't gone through, you know, the process, like, are there things that immediately stood out to you, even maybe on that first retreat? Because you have these 4 retreats throughout the year. Is there anything that stood out to you immediately through being there?
Yeah.
That you got from it?
So I think especially in that first retreat, I really became aware that I very much trust myself to figure things out and to be put in different situations and know that there's some kind of inner strength that I tap into, and I'm going to be okay. Like I just so that came out a lot, was just like, wow, I really do trust myself. I didn't know that I trusted myself as much as I did, to just be with whatever showed up. So that was one. The other one, which was much harder for me to be with, was that I was still being seen as someone who had some kind of exterior that wasn't showing all of me, that I still wasn't leaning into being messy and human and real, that I still, even though it was a few years after I left corporate, that I still had that corporate cloak on, and that people saw me in a way that felt very different than how I experienced myself internally. So that was hard. I remember writing in my journal how difficult it was to think that I had let go of some of that, and then to have someone reflect back, no, that, there was corporate speak, or, that persona was still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, no, I remember just talking about you. I remember that, and I remember thinking that in the early days, and thinking you were a little bit formal or something in those first few days, or I made up about you. We talked about how we made assumptions about each other on another call as well, and how we learned so much through sharing what we assumed about each other. But yeah, as the course went on, I saw your silliness come out, your craziness in various ways, and it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because if we hadn't been living in the house, I would never have seen any of that. I would have made assumptions about how you were, both there and in your life, and it's interesting, isn't it? I think a big part of the course was hearing what they don't force you. They recommend that you share really, like, the impact someone's having on you, like, openly every day throughout the whole program. Like, if you see something, say it. If I feel like you could have shown up better or done something different, or that you played a bit small in that scenario and you could have spoken up, I would say it. And it was really good. It got into a really nice it became a nice experience to be able to just be honest with people about their impact, from a perspective of trying to help them grow, and from the perspective of trying to help yourself grow by giving honest feedback. So that was something I really enjoyed about the program. But yeah, in terms, sorry.
And I love that you say that, Steve, because as much as it was difficult for me to hear, I'm so glad that was shared with me, because I was able to open up. I was able to let go of that corporate guard just a little bit more each day. And I think that you and I wouldn't have become such good friends had I kept that up. And that's true of many different people there. So as much as it was difficult, like, I still remember when it was first said to me, and it hit me, like it really did kind of hit me, but it was serving me, not pleasing me. And that's one of the things we learn as coaches, is you're not there to please your client, you're there to serve them. And I very much felt served. As painful as it was, I felt served, and still do to this day feel that it was in my service that someone said that to me. And it wasn't just once, a few people said that to me after the fact, but it was for my growth.
Yeah, and feedback like that I think it's such an interesting thing when you relate back to the real world, like the concept of feedback in corporations. Like, I'll give feedback on your colleagues. It's always a bit like, oh, I've got to give feedback. I'll try and be nice. And then when you get the feedback, you instantly think, oh, am I like that? Or do I? And then you probably discard it. Whereas what we're talking about is like really real, honest, open feedback. And we're almost trained through that program to really receive it. So I think in a way, if that could translate more into the outside world, where you actually are genuinely interested in feedback of your impact on others, and you're willing to look at it not from a perspective of truth, but just from a perspective, okay, this is the impact some people I'm having on some people, whether it's true or not. And where's the line of truth? Who knows? But just to be able to see it and go, well, if that's the impact I'm having on some people, what might I want to do just to be aware of that, and possibly tweak things if I choose to. So I think that was one of the biggest learnings from the whole program for me, was around really being open to feedback and giving it, and seeing the value in it, you know.
So so interesting, because I was thinking back, you know, some of us in that retreat had a really hard time receiving that feedback, right? And fought it for a while until we got a little curious. But so that was one of your kind of takeaways, was being in that place of both giving and receiving.
Yeah, it was. I think the other thing was just like seeing yourself from the perspective of others. I think you live in your head so much of what you think of yourself, and normally it's more derogatory than the reality, or there's always the, you know, the imposter, or the things I should do differently. So throughout that time when you're there, you're constantly, I guess this is tied to feedback to a degree, but there's other things that happen on that course where you really get to see yourself, you know, as others see you. And, you know, it's quite interesting. I think that was one of the biggest light bulb moments for me, was actually seeing what others see of me rather than my little view of it in here. There was a moment I remember just really going, oh my God, wow, is that really my impact, or is that really something the way I show up? And it was quite powerful, really. So there was that, and it was almost like a confidence boost to come out of that program. I was like, okay, I'm not going to just doubt myself quite so much. It's like, yeah, I have to make all these contributions, I have this impact. And I think I finally got it, rather than someone or one of your friends going, oh no, you're good at this, or you shouldn't worry about this. It's like, I think I really got it from that program, through that constant light being shone on you, or on who you are. So there was that. And also I think just another biggest thing is realizing we are, like, fundamentally all the same, as cliche as that sounds. Like being in a house with 20 plus people from all over the world, different backgrounds, religions, sexualities, color. I mean, it's just, you know, it was just such a diverse set of people, that when it boils down to it, by the last day, everybody was as close could be, and realizing we're the same. We want the same things. We technically, physically, we might want different things, but in terms of deep down, the way we want to feel, the way we want to show up, is all the same.
Yeah.
And by that point, you've all got your masks off, and you do realize actually we are pretty much the same. And that was a really big learning, and a big learning to realize sometimes you have to lean into people more than others, because, you know, we're naturally drawn to people that are like us. And that was one of my bits of feedback, actually, from people, was, I feel like you wouldn't want to be friends with me or hang out with me because you seem like you're in this group of people. And it's like, and I didn't realize that impact I was having, you know. So I think sometimes you just have to, you have to realize everybody's different. It doesn't mean you can't get on. It's like you just have to work differently with different people, lean in a bit, and know that deep down some people have just different natural types of personalities.
Yes.
That might come across like either, you know, slightly more cold, or slightly more reserved, or slightly more eccentric, or slightly, you know, whatever. And I think sometimes we tend to avoid what's slightly different, when actually there's amazing relationships to be found there if you just lean in slightly. So that was the other thing I think that really stands out for me.
Yeah, that was that second retreat where we're really being in relationship with people and looking at how you co-create, was probably one of my biggest lessons learned, was how to actually connect with someone without any of the BS, without any of, like, to bring that all down, and dispose of all of the assumptions we make, all of it, and just actually be able to co-create with someone from a place of realness, of just being, I don't know, just working on the relationship, and bringing up the things we make up about people without even knowing, and being courageous enough to share that. And I don't know, I think there was a level of intimacy that evolved there from a friendship perspective, that it just felt like there was a deeper level that I went to in terms of friendships, that you only, at least for me, I only had with a few people who had known me for decades. And all of a sudden, here are 21 new people And because of how we came together and the experiences we had together, we're able to grow that friendship, that intimacy, that connection at a deep level outside of all of the crap that tends to happen with friendships, right?
Key word for me that comes up is real. It's like you're encouraged to be as real as possible in every situation, which is honest, real and honest. And like you said, you're paired with someone, whether it's leading a course or doing a piece of work. I think in the outside world, we often just you work with someone. If you don't always get on with them, you just make up your own stories. You push through it, and you have an okay experience. Or whereas what you're encouraged to do through that program is like be really real with them. Like, right, what do we both want to create together? Where do we agree? Where do we disagree? What assumptions am I making about how you might work? What am I good at, and what am I not so good at? Where might I need your help? Like build a relationship, like rather than pushing through anything. And just that process was really great because, like you say, you learn to just become more intimate with someone, not in the way that some people might think of intimacy, but just being a bit more real and open. All of a sudden people realize, oh, you're a human just like me, let's work together, rather than having those barriers and the masks that we carry around day to day.
Yeah, I mean, we were encouraged to say the things that you wouldn't typically say. So there's no way from there. It's kind of almost like we're messy, and from that something grows, right? Because we've been kind of messy together, right? We've been raw, we've been real, we've been, courageous enough to tell the other person the assumptions we're making up, all that kind of stuff. So it really has allowed me, even in my own work, to go do, a talk, a workshop, where it's a group of people and feel connected with that group of people in a different way than I did before.
Is that because you're seeing them more as individual set of humans and you're being more human, and therefore the whole experience is feeling that way, or is it something else?
I think it's because I tended to put my attention on me and how I was showing up. And now my attention is outside more. So, I mean, I obviously still will think about me because that's a natural place for humans to go. But I really find that I spend a lot more time on the other person and what we're co-creating. Like I find it's like, what are we co-creating here? And then I just get so engaged and in love with the co-creation that I'm lost a little bit. And so I'm able to just feel so much more connected, and there's a sense of intimacy that happens in even a group setting. Before COVID, I did a workshop with about 60 female entrepreneurs, and I swear I was on this great high for a few days, and it was because of the connection that I felt in that room. Oh, there goes my dog. So there's a level of intimacy, I think, because I was able to experience it there. It allows me to access it more freely now with the world, with people around me. So I think that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, no, I think the key that you're talking about around like working with another person or leaning into others, it made me realize for sure that I've lived so long up until that point trying to do everything on my own, like always trying to focus on the problem or the thing, like from my own perspective. Even if I was working with someone else, I would still be quite insular and like, okay, I need to do this, or I'll come up with these ideas, rather than leaning into that other person and realizing that I'm not responsible for this. Even in like sort of full-time role where I'm a leader in a company, it's like even then I'm not responsible for everything. I can lead, I can co-create with the people around me and enjoy the process of the shared responsibility of solving a problem, or the shared responsibility of this. Like it just shifted my whole mindset.
Yeah. And
took a lot of the weight off, actually. I think leaving that program, I definitely had less weight around feeling responsible for just every single thing. And it became fun to work with other people, ask for help, and yeah, I guess just doing stuff with others is better than just doing everything yourself.
Yeah, and there was there was permission given for messing up,
Mm,
permission given for being human, permission. Like one of the things they say is I can't remember the wording, but something like, we guarantee we're going to fail, right? Like
yeah,
we promise that we'll fail at some point, fail hugely, because there's it's not even permission. It's almost like, yeah, like go to your edge so that you can feel what it's like and you can grow where that edge actually sits for you, right?
yeah,
How do you widen that that space, what Dan Siegel calls like the window of tolerance? How do you widen that if you don't play at the edge, or even
yeah, yeah.
go
No,
to the other
exactly.
side of it?
Exactly. It reminds me of that conversation we had about comfort zone. And I think it's so super important in life to know that we all live in a comfort zone, and we live in a conditioned zone that we're just used to. And that's fine if you are genuinely happy. And we've said this before, if you're genuinely happy and content every day, great, stay there. And if you're not, or you have an urge, or you feel like something's not quite right, which is probably why we both signed up for leadership. We're both happy. I think we talked about this on leadership program. We're both happy. We're content. We're generally happy people. People often said to us, surely you've got these deep rooted issues or concerns. And I don't think we did. We just wanted to actually, I think we went there knowing we could stretch and knowing we wanted to experience a bit more.
Yeah.
And that's probably what we got out of it, is that ability to stretch and play around with those different maybe emotions or different ways of being that we're not usually comfortable sitting in. And yeah, I guess, yeah, I think for me that's the key. It's for everyone going to a program like that, or it could be a smaller scale version. It's good to go with an open mind, knowing that you're willing to stretch yourself to learn more about yourself and see what's on the other side of it, which is normally fun, because variety is the spice of life. And they always say the excitement lives at the edge of your comfort zone, and it really does, because you're learning new things and you realize at the end of it, God, I'm capable of so much more than I thought. Since that leadership program, I've definitely done so many more things I would never have done before, and that have enriched my own life, built different relationships, just tested myself. And there's way more to come that I know just wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been through that experience.
Yeah, me too. And I would say an open mind is a requirement for this program.
Yeah, if anybody's going to sign up.
If anyone's going to sign up for this program, you really need to be curious and have an open mind, because you're going to be stretched, and you're going to be stretched in front of a bunch of people. Like, you're not going to be stretched in the comfort of your own home. You're going to be stretched in front of an audience. And so that's part of the intensity, but that's also one of the biggest mirrors we can have for ourselves, right? And the way to really look at where our edges are and how do we grow out of them. And here's, two people who, we're 3 years out from when we started the program. And I can honestly say that I'm a different person in many ways than I was, not only because of that program, but certainly that program had a good part in that transformation.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Same for me. And like you're saying, you are going to be not exposed, but you are going to have to stretch yourself in front of others. But I think this is the good thing about these group things, whatever it is. It's good to remember the spotlight isn't just on you, it's like on everyone. So you're going through this group experience. I think that was why most of us became so close really over that time, is because you're going through a shared experience of learning and growing together. And I think that's a good thing for anyone that's like feeling a bit like, even if it's not a leadership program, if ever you feel a bit lost or out of place, I think it's always good to look for stuff like that, where there's other people that have an interest in something that you're interested in. Because if you can find a group of people that want to learn something, or a club that has something similar to what you want to do, you can create like really great connections and have this support network, which we still have today from this course. Just because, it's a great place to just meet like-minded people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We got messy together, and now we're in each other's lives for good.
I know. Exactly. And yeah, I can't imagine it any other way.
Yeah, me neither. I think that's it. Anything else we want to say in terms of this? In terms of, I mean, here's what I think. I think I know for me, there's a ton of takeaways from that experience that I learned about myself, way too much for us to deal with in this conversation. But perhaps you and I can almost come up with like our top 5 list of what did we learn and share that as our own kind of takeaways, and see what people, whether there's some learning in it for others.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Let's do it, because it is tricky, especially because we don't want to give away content of the program. It wouldn't be fair to anyone that's going on in the future or that runs it, But I think hopefully we've given a flavor of it. Yeah, and it is ultimately, it is that personal leadership, taking responsibility for the life you want to create and really stretching yourself, and through the stretching, you learn so much about what you're capable of and who you actually are, not who you think you might, who you might think you are. And it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Alrighty, I think that's it for this episode of Casual Conversations.
Feels like it. I'll see you next time, Lisa.
Yeah. See you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.